Hi, everyone. Hello to the BEwell webinar, the Hub Series. BEwell is about helping each other grow, like helping through professional and personal development. We help others to be the best version of themselves, like to perform well at work and in life. And my name is Gary Marcus Judge. I'm the host, and my co-host today is Jason Johnson. So let me tell you a little bit about Jason. Apart from he lives in Texas on a farm with 2 children, and they're in the middle of a snowstorm at the moment, but he's indoors, and so he's nice and warm. Jason is the founder of the Heart-Centered Leader, and he's a working genius facilitator. So we're going to be talking about the working genius that we can see on the shelf behind him. If you look carefully, he's an authentic people-first leader. His motto is success is about learning to engage the hearts and minds of your employees. So our talk today is entitled The 6 Types of Working Genius. So we're talking about an assessment tool, but not just an assessment tool of personality, which is the normal way that companies work, but we're talking about the personality and the productivity of people. And so we're going to be looking at that. There are, like, as the title says, the 6 types of the genius. And so, Jason, welcome. Thank you very much for your time and your expertise and being here with me on the BEwell. Perhaps you'd like to take it away a little bit about who you are. I mean, I just told you how you know who you are, but basically, how do we connect, and how did Working Genius come onto your path? A little bit of information.
Yeah, thanks, Gary, so much. I'm certainly happy to be here, and I think that well, first of all, gosh, I've been in leadership for 25 years in corporate America. I've led teams across the U.S. and different teams in different states. And when I was young in my career, I didn't really, I was learning, right? I was learning to be a corporate leader, learning to be a manager, but I was in charge of different cities, branches, facilities, teams in different states. And I started to notice a pattern because I've always really just engaged people first. Like that's my natural instinct. And productivity and corporate financial results thrived. But I never really focused on those. And so when we connected on LinkedIn and I saw that your organization is called BEwell, and it's really centered around helping people be their best self, I thought, oh my gosh, Working Genius really aligns with that message, because that's what Working Genius is about, the 6 types of Working Genius. And so we connected on LinkedIn, we had a chat, and then scheduled this call because it really is getting down to the core of who we are and embracing that, our God-given talents. Gary, you took your assessment before this, and I would certainly love to hear your reflection on how that resonated with you.
Actually, I took that a while ago. I took it before Christmas, so I can't really remember. I can't really remember exactly what the results were as well.
Yeah.
But I tried to, the questions I answered were just straight from the heart. I didn't think about it. I didn't give myself any chance to go deeper and look at the pros and the cons. I just said, that's it, there, it's gone. So I don't know where the results are, if you have them with you, or we can dig them up somewhere.
Yeah.
But,
So the 6 types of Working Genius is really about the flow of work. And Patrick Lencioni owns his company's the Table Group, and he started his organization, I don't know, almost 3 decades ago, maybe roughly. He hired people that he loved and found very dearing and close to him, friends, and so he owned his own company, works with people that he enjoys being around. But a few years ago, he found himself going home frustrated in his own business, and he didn't know why, because he was doing what he loved to do. And so he really started to dissect the things he was doing during the day and came up with this model. It's the acronym is WIDGET, WIDGET,
which
and
stands
it's
for, Jason, which stands for?
yeah. So it's the flow of work. W is wonder, and everything that we do starts with wonder. Whether we're working on a project or planning a vacation, it's the person who has the gift of wonder asks the big question. They're the ones that challenge the status quo, or they're the ones that say, could things be different? Should we do this differently, right? And then the I is the people who have
So
the gift.
could
Yeah.
wonder be another a synonym for creativity? Are we talking about that? Creativity?
Yeah. So the flow of work is broken up into 3 phases, Gary. In the ideation phase is the W and the I. So your Working Genius profile is your 2 gifts are invention and enablement, which means that you love to solve problems that help others. That's what those two things together come to, because enablement is not, it's about helping somebody else with their ideas. And so you take your gift of invention, creativity, problem solving, seeing things, like you have the ability, your profile says or suggests that you have the ability to break things down and
Yeah.
and rebuild them. And when you connect with other people and somebody says, I'm working on this thing, your mind starts going into how do we make that better, and coming up with solutions. And that's who you are. That's who God made you to be, Gary.
So
Um,
we said wonder is the W,
yep,
invention is the I,
yep.
discernment the D, right?
Discernment, yeah. Just so discernment is this solution that we just created, does it make sense for this situation, right?
Hmm.
Does it? It's having good intuition, good accessibility to like if I said to you, um, hey, we should go snow skiing in June. Well, hey Jason, it's not snow ski season. Maybe we should do something different, right? Like if we were
Yeah.
planning a vacation,
Yeah.
or looking at any workflow situation and saying, is this applicable to what we're focused on right now? It might be a good, like sometimes we invent things or we solve problems, but they don't really they're not really applicable to the current situation. Like it might be good down the road or a different situation, but so that's discernment, is understanding, having good judgment,
Mm-hmm. And then
understanding what.
then there was the G, it was WID, and then there was the G called
Yeah,
galvanizing, which
yeah. So
I found very sort of a mouthful. Galvanizing is very American, I think, but
yeah, yeah,
motivational, drive,
yep.
enthusiasm.
Yeah, so the first phase of work is ideation, which is the WI, and then the middle phase of work is the discernment and the galvanizing. So once we've discerned that the idea is workable and applicable, the galvanizing piece is rallying our team around the idea, motivating others, creating buy-in. And frankly, a lot of times in corporate America, we're moving along so fast that we don't spend enough time in that space to create buy-in,
Mm,
and we go right into the last phase is implementation, which is enablement. That's connecting with the others and helping them. And then tenacity, so it's WIDGET.
mm.
And then tenacity is achieving the results that we desired from the very beginning. It's buttoning it up, pushing it across the finish line,
Mm.
uh, achieving the perceived ideas that we wanted to initially,
So,
achieving our
so,
goal.
so, so what's so different about this from the other assessment tools
Yeah,
that are around? Because I mean, I looked at this and I said, wonder, creativity, invention. Okay, we're talking about invention is generating a solution to the problem. So whatever the problem is, right? And we said
yeah,
discernment. So is again trying to understand if that solution that you've come up with is feasible, is actionable. You can do that. Then I said
mhm,
galvanizing. Well, what do we talk about here? Motivation, galvanizing, motivate the team to buy into the whatever. And then enablement, yeah, to implement the solution. And the last one, tenacity, was to make sure that the solution gets, the project gets completed.
yeah.
So what is so different about the six working geniuses? Genius.
Yeah. So it's a fairly new assessment. It's about 4 or 5 years old, and we don't have enough time to really know that it what's how that changes. But um, I believe, and Patrick Lencioni believes, that it's who we are at our core. And I'll tell you, when I did my assessment, my top two geniuses are wonder and discernment. And when I think about who I was as a 6-year-old,
Hmm.
those two things were relevant in a 6-year-old mindset. When I think about who I was at 16, asking the big questions and discerning the solutions, that's who I was at 16. I'm 49, Gary, and I still embrace wonder and discernment in the moments. So the situation will differ as our experience grows, but it's who we are at our core. It's just like you probably have been problem solving your whole life. Now,
Well,
the problems that you solve have differ, right? Like breaking things down and finding solutions. I mean, think about that as your childhood and as you were an adolescent and into your young adult years and then who you are today.
so why is this why is this assessment tool important, Jason?
I
Why
think
is
it's a game. I think it's a game changer on the future of work.
okay?
When we've built these structures, these infrastructures, and we say this is your job, this is what you need to do,
Hmm.
but the world's changed tremendously over the last 150 years, and really changed in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, the way we work has changed tremendously in the last 3 years as we've all come back from, being isolated from, whether it was COVID or what the situation was, right? Like the work model is changing. And so
Yeah.
we might have had a position in the company before that says these 10 things are your responsibility, or these 6 things are your responsibility. And I can speak from my personal experience. There's always a couple of things that really just drain our energy. And the working genius helps us find fulfillment in the things that bring us energy and give us energy. Because you can do certain things in your life, in your job, in your day that you absolutely love to do. You could do it for 8 hours, 9 hours, all day long, go home and still feel energized. Like I had a wonderful day today. Or you can do something that drains your energy for an hour or 2 hours and you're wiped out. You're stressed, you're exhausted. That goes home and impacts your family, your the community that you serve. Um, and
So
so
are
when
you, are
we
you, are you saying that the Working Genius assessment tool is able to identify the qualities of a person or the gifts of the person and pigeonhole them into specific tasks in a company or positions in the company? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I'm not sure I like the word pigeonhole, but
No,
yeah,
no,
it
I was
but
just
it,
I was just provoking you actually.
yeah, and you have. So imagine you have 4 people doing the same sort of task because the organization is large, right?
Yeah.
So you have a team of 100 and you have these 4 people that do the same sort of thing. Uh, but there's, let's say there's 4 tasks that each person has to do. If I am doing those 4 things and 2 of those things drain my energy, but my partner or my coworker who sits next to me actually loves doing those 2 things, but hates the other 2 things, and we swapped and said, hey, why don't you do all of this and I'll do all of this? I'm actually going to be more productive. She's going to be more productive, and we are going to thrive. So it takes teams that are trying to balance their days and says, okay, if you do the things that give you energy, you're more productive, and therefore we become more high performing.
Okay. And so when does that take place, that assessment you just said? So these assessments, are we talking about at the beginning of the employee's history or journey into the company, or is it continuously? Is it every month, every 3 months, every 6 months? When are they undertaken?
Yeah, so you know, I support 13 different locations. And when I go into an office, I do the working genius assessment with all the people leaders, the
Mm.
people that are in charge of others in a department, that sort of thing. And it's absolutely something that some of them have adopted. As soon as they bring somebody into the organization, they give them their working genius assessment, and that way they know how to place them. Gary, we've had people interview for one job, and during we like them, we think they're a cultural fit, so we hire them, and then we give them assessments, and maybe they're going to be better fit in another role. And what we found is that they're actually happier with that other role than they were for the job that they interviewed for. Because
Mm.
let's be honest, people will interview because they need work, they need income. And if you can find an organization that you're a good cultural fit, it
Mm.
doesn't really matter what you do in that organization. It's about the environment of the people and the culture around you. And so if the working genius assessment can help place them in a role that's going to suit them well, they're going to be more engaged, they're going to be more productive, and it's benefits them
So
and the company.
just picking up on the way you said the cultural fit. So when we talk about the cultural fit, is like it's the first step. Well, so give us some steps, Jason, on how the hiring process works. I mean, we're talking about the cultural fit. We're talking about the working genius assessment tools. There must be a step before the cultural fit too, or not? What is the hiring process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the cultural fit is should be our first layer of defense in an interview.
Hmm.
Does this person believe what we believe? Do they? When I say that, I mean mindset, right? A growth mindset. Like we're doing things that will advance us. We're a place of curiosity, a place of uh, you know what are we trying to achieve, right? So when we can identify, I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people over the years, and there are individuals that I've met that I just go, I want to hire this person. I don't know what we're going to have them do, but this person needs to be on the team. Now,
Okay.
skills can be taught.
So when that happens, Jason, what is the motivation behind you feeling that? Is that because that person is someone who actually aligns with your way of thinking? Is it someone who can be managed? Because sometimes when you're a leader, you can't have too many leaders in the pack. You
That's
need to
right.
have a leader, you need to have followers. So where does that all play into the process when you say I want to employ this person because this person, what is the motivating factor there? What
Yeah,
is
as a leader, a lot of leaders will hire people that think like them, and that's their downfall, because then they get a bunch of people in the same room and they can't see outside of their box. So as a leader myself, I I will often, most often, hire people who think differently than me, because I understand that it really aligns with this working genius model, because we all have blind spots, Gary. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
um, so like on my work, the working genius model really is 6 buckets, and two of them are the things that give you energy. And then the other end of the spectrum, two of the things are that drain your energy. So galvanizing and tenacity happen to be my two frustrations. Those are the two things that drain my energy. Unless I'm in working on a project that I absolutely love, I'm wholehearted, tenacity will show up. But just in normal business workflow, those are the things that drain me. So if I can identify somebody who loves to implement things, I'm an idea person. I love to think about what's next in the future. What is the innovation piece? Uh,
Hmm.
I is my third genius. It's so the creativity, the problem solving.
Hmm.
Those are I love spending time in that space.
A question there. So we're talking about like the working genius assessment as
Mhm.
in you, Jason Johnson, or as your role? What are we looking at there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So knowing that, so me as Jason Johnson, right? So that's who I am.
Okay.
But knowing that it's the flow of work, and you have ideation, activation, implementation, the 3 stages of work.
Hmm.
What's the role that that person's going to play in the organization? So if they function in the uh, implementation piece, if that's where their genius is at, they're going to struggle to be a leader. It doesn't mean that they can't be a leader. It just means they're going to struggle there, because they prefer to do things and get them done versus develop others to get them done. And
Hmm.
so those are skills that can be taught, like emotional intelligence, right? It's if somebody really embraces the model and says, "Yes, this is who I am," then that's acceptance, right? It's awareness, self-awareness. And then you look at we put together a team map. So when you have the 6 stages, and if you have 10 people on your team and everybody takes the assessment, it shows where people show up the best. And so it really takes trust, it takes compassion and empathy, and it's um, having that self-awareness, team awareness, how to manage those relationships. And so there's leadership skills that if you're going to grow your career, that absolutely those are core values, having awareness of others and
So
yourself.
looking at the 6 types of working genius. So as you said, in my for my assessment, I have invention and enablement. So it's like, as being an entrepreneur, I've been running my business for 25 years. I've had to actually, create a team. I'm not the genius on every point of business, but I had to
Right.
create a team. As for an invention, like we said about invention, like me, a problem solver. Yes, that's also been a bit of a downfall, really, because when you're problem solving, I don't know if you're helping others to grow. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah. So the third piece, Gary, is the discernment.
Yeah.
And that's really understanding. You're right. If you don't have somebody on your team with discernment, then you might miss whether or not the problem you just solved is applicable for the situation or the person involved. So when when you look at the 6 types of working genius model, they're gears, right? So they're set up as gears. They work together. So if you think about mechanics of an engine, what do you have to do to keep your engine running smoothly? You've got to keep fresh oil in it. You've got to
Yeah.
keep grime and dirt out of it, because dirt particles will seize up an engine, right? And so communication and collaboration are the oil in the working genius model when you think about it in that functionality. And so
Right.
so trust, communication, collaboration. So if I'm working on a project and I find myself stuck, like if I'm seized up as an engine, right? I have to identify what part of the process am I stuck in. And then I look at my team map and I go, oh, Gary has good in invention, and I've already posed the big question. I know that something needs to change. I've got good discernment, but I can't quite solve the problem. So I go to Gary and I say, hey, Gary, I go to you and I say, hey, this is something I'm trying to work on. You come up with a solution, which sparks the discernment in me to go, yeah, I think that's workable for this situation. Like
Right.
be uh, you might not be very knowledgeable in what I'm working on, But just by me coming to you and saying, hey, let me give you an overview, what are your thoughts? You're gonna start coming up with ideas to solve the problem. And then I get to discern, because discernment's one of my geniuses. I get to
Right.
discern whether that's going to be applicable. And then I might have some follow-up questions and say, well, what if we did that, Gary, but we changed it a little bit? And you go, oh, well, then we could do it this way. And I'm like, perfect, that's it. And then I go about my way. So that's the collaboration piece and the
Mm.
communication piece.
So how does that sort of unfold in leadership? Like, I mean, here we're talking about actually delegating some sort of power leadership, because when
Yeah.
the leader, if you're the leader and you're going to your subordinates and you're asking, because they have these geniuses, let's say, to contribute to your overall decision, how does that work as in the leader in the role?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different leadership models. There's this there's this command and control where the leader wants to make all the decisions
Yeah.
and tell people what to do. I've never been that type of leader. In fact, my entire life, what I do is when I have a problem and I say, I have this problem, I'll bring my team into the conference room, into the boardroom, and I'll set the problem in the middle of the table and I'll tell them what the problem is. And I'll say, how do you guys think we should solve this? And then I just listen, because I know that I've built a team with people of different perspectives. And so when I do that, it really aligns, Gary, you read my bio in the beginning, and the founder of the Heart Centered Leader. And when I think about heart-centered leadership, it's really about bringing people together and meeting them where they're at, having compassion and empathy for them, trusting them, and finding solutions. So I get the ultimate say of what's going to be right for our business as the leader, but I want to hear your ideas, because I have blind spots, you have blind spots, we all have blind spots. But when we start having this, session, then my blind spots start to open up and I go, oh, I never thought of that. You know what? We could do that. And then we start to lean on people in the room that were created with different gifts and go, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? And then it keeps building, and then we come up with a solution and we go execute that solution. But having as a leadership model of opening up to everybody in the room, and because you might have somebody junior on your team that doesn't have a lot of experience with your business, but their thought process might spark something in you, the one that does have the experience as the leader of this organization that's been here for 10 years.
Mm.
And then we can navigate that path so that it aligns with our business model.
So how long does this assessment take? And
So
that's the first question. The second question is, once I've been assessed, as in I've been assessed as invention and enablement, does that mean that I can't develop the other areas? They're just not in line with my personality, my values, virtues, or is it something that can be worked on with training courses or other?
Yeah, absolutely. So the answer to your question, the first question, the assessment takes about 10 minutes. And then once everybody takes the assessment, I usually do a Working Genius workshop, and I'll get in the same room with people and walk them through about a 2-hour workshop. And we'll go through the overview of the model and how it flows. And then we'll start talking about what are the next steps. Okay. So that's kind of the answer to your first question. The answer to your second question is the areas that fall into your frustration. It doesn't mean that you can't do those things. It means that it takes more energy because you naturally don't go there. God didn't create you to be that person. And I'll give you a little example. When I was a kid, Gary, my parents put me in 2 sports, baseball and basketball. And I absolutely loved basketball. I was super engaged with it. I would practice it. I wanted to practice it. I would practice it on Saturday with my friends at the park. We'd go down to the school and shoot hoops on a Saturday. And because I did that, I practiced, I was consistent, I had repetition, my skills naturally got better. And I was a pretty decent basketball player when I was younger. I haven't played in years. But baseball, I wasn't really engaged in baseball. I didn't like it. So therefore, I didn't practice it on off time. I didn't go to the park on Saturday. I wasn't consistent. I didn't put in all the reps. My energy was drained. And so therefore, I just really wasn't that good at it. But I'll tell you, a few years later, some friends of mine were when I got to the high school age, 16, 17 years old, some friends of mine said, hey, why don't you try out for the baseball team? So I went to summer camp and I practiced. I got coaching. I learned how to play better. And therefore, became a better baseball player. But I was doing it for the wrong reasons.
Right.
At my heart, in my core, I really didn't want to play baseball, but I was able to become competent at baseball because I learned from people who were really good. I honed in on my skills, and the training and the development helped me be better in that area. But And so I tell that story because we can become competent in certain skills, but do they bring us energy? And is that the life that you want to live?
What about Jason, the thing that's happened to I've seen that people have come and they have a natural talent for, I don't know, accounting, numbers, and they love that. Um, they don't want to do it, but they're really good at it. Have you ever had that situation where someone is good at something, but they don't want to do it? They'd rather go into the marketing and the creativity because they think that's where they are. But in reality, when they're with the numbers, they're really good and they're very precise and meticulous. So what happens there?
Yeah. And it's so really, I would have to, speak with that individual. But what I've discovered is we do, I'll give you an example. I did a session with a company, and um, there wasn't, so there was somebody who was there, really good at something, right? Really good at a skill set. And it's because they went down that path as a child because their parents were good at that thing.
Hmm.
So it was in their home at an early age. This is what we do. We learn from our environment. We become really good at something because we think that that's what we need to do. But at our core, we want to go do this marketing thing, right? We want to be creative. And so you can, yes, you can be really good at something because you're conditioned to be good at it. And unless you have this awareness of, that, God created us all differently and gave us different gifts. And just because my parents did this doesn't mean I have to do it. Just because, being an accountant, it was the standard in my home. I could become good at it because I'm around it. I'm influenced by it. I'm taught that way. If I sit down to do my homework and I've got two accountants asking me questions that are my parents who I love and trust, then I become conditioned and good at seeing things the way I was taught to see them.
Yeah, yeah. I saw that. Talking about sports, talking about your baseball and basketball. Here in Italy, we this football, soccer. We call
Yep.
soccer. And it was a friend of my son's best friend, and he wanted to be an attacker, a striker. He wanted to score the goals because when you score the goals, you get the glory, you know.
Yep.
And what happened was he was playing, and one day one of their goalkeeper got injured. And they took this guy from the front. He was the attacker, and he was the tallest guy in the team. So he was the attacker, and so they put him in the goal. He put him in goal. They said, "Look, the manager put him in goal because said you're the tallest one. Get in goal." He said, I've never done this before." He said they just put the gloves on him and they put him in goal, and he was brilliant. He was brilliant. They found the goalkeeper. So when the other goalkeeper came back, he couldn't get back in the team because my son's friend had taken over. But he
Yeah.
always wanted to be in the attack because he wanted the
Yeah.
glory. And
Yeah. He
so,
was
but
motivation.
yeah, but the inner talent that he had was to stay in goal and protect the net.
That sounds like my story. I loved football or soccer when
Yeah,
I was a kid, and I started off. You use the phrase attacker in the U.S. We maybe it's being a forward position,
yeah.
and I wound up being the goalie, and I loved being the goalie, and that's how I showed up to serve my team. Right? It wasn't scoring points; it was preventing others from scoring points. Um, yeah. So
Exactly. And so, yeah.
absolutely.
So that was me. Sometimes you come into an office, and we were talking about sports, but sometimes in an office you come for a job, and you've come for a job as the bookkeeper, and there's a position as a receptionist to fill. You go there, and you suddenly you're really good at that, but you want to go back to the bookkeeper. So how does a leader manage all of that?
Yeah.
Keeping the person happy and satisfied and fulfilled.
Yeah, so there's certainly aspects of our careers that will drain us or things that we have to do that we don't care for.
Yeah.
And so that's really developing that person. And I'll tell you, early on in my leadership journey, I don't like to do small tasks. And so I assumed that all people don't like to do small tasks. And I had a hard time as a young leader, a junior leader in my early 20s. I had a hard time giving tasks to people because I felt that because I didn't like to do them, that they wouldn't like to do them. And it felt like I was just dumping work on them.
Hmm.
And one day I was talking to somebody who was an administrative assistant, and I said, "Is this okay?" And she's like, "Are you kidding?" She goes, "I love to do tasks." And this is like 2 years into her working for me. And so I did this whole time I felt like I was dumping tasks on her and I felt guilty for it. And she's like, "Are you kidding?" She goes, "I don't want to have to think of what to do. I just want you to tell me what needs to be done. I love going and implementing those things." And so it took us having a conversation, right? Connecting and communicating. Then we started to build this collaboration model that started to flow. She became more productive. I became more productive because I wasn't holding this energy around guilt of, oh my gosh, I'm giving somebody stuff that they don't have to want to do, and then I'm worrying about it. And once I could free myself of that, I became more productive. She became more productive, and we were a rock star team.
And so, are companies open to these assessment tools, or what is the general consensus?
Yes and no.
Mm,
It really starts with the leader. It starts with the senior person. Do they believe that are they, an out of the box thinker? Do they believe that, let's be real, Gary, when we look at work, when we go back to like the industrial age, the commu the and, the technology age, like we continue to advance, right? Just like automobiles, just like everything else, right? Technology and innovation happen, change is happening. And so when we can first start to accept that things evolve, we have to take a good look at this work model that we're currently doing worked great in 2010, but is it applicable today? And when we think about the culture of humanity and the well-being of humanity, that people want more out of life, they want purpose out of life, we have to start to we have to go, hey, can we structure our business model around that? And a lot of organizations are really getting into this flex work model, right? Work from home, work at the office, work wherever you are. And that wouldn't have happened pre-COVID. The only people that worked from home are the salespeople or the people that traveled. It
yeah.
wasn't, so that's really opened up perspective. And
Mm,
so if you have somebody who struggles with, so if the W, the gift of wonder, could things be different, asking the big questions, falls in your area of frustration, it's difficult to see that because it's not where you naturally go. And so having somebody on your team that says, hey Gary, could we do this better if we approached it differently? And then
mm,
you ask me some questions. What's better and what's differently, right? And then we start to talk about that. And then we go to, what are we trying to achieve? Like, what's our goal? And does this support the goal? So sometimes we get hung up on the tasks that get
mm,
us to the goal, but if we can start to expand our mind, bring people into a room and take our blinders and move them abroad, start to broaden that view of accepting and trusting and listening to, then things evolve.
mm, mm.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
so,
I was a question then. I was in there. Is why rock the boat?
well, I was born in the 1970s, and cars at the time, I remember not having a seatbelt. Why would you want to put a seatbelt in a car if we didn't have a seatbelt in a car before? Well, it's going to keep you safe, right? So change happens, and we do things all the time to better our situation. And so organizations today are looking at high numbers of turnover and burnout.
Yeah.
And so why are people leaving? Why are people quitting? Why are they getting burned out? So when we ask that big question, let's dive into it. They're not finding joy and fulfillment in the work that they do, whether that's the type of work they're doing or whether that's the leader. I mean, we've heard it 1,000 times, Gary. People don't quit jobs, they quit leaders. They quit, right? And
Yeah.
so you can work a job that, like, look, I've worked in a warehouse environment. I've worked in a tech environment fixing stuff. I've worked in a sales environment, and um, I've sold coffee. Like I didn't when I was a kid, I didn't dream of being a coffee salesman, right? But I
Mm,
worked for a leader who inspired me and gave me flexibility, and I was able to step into who I was and be myself and help people. And by the
mm.
way, the end result was selling coffee, right? So when we can be engaged in a way that we get to feel seen and heard, then we're going to thrive. We want more of that, and that's with leadership. And
Yeah.
then
So I mean, so is this sort of intervention, the Working Genius or the other assessment tools that are around, is that done like when things are going downhill, they're going bad, and then you bring this in to actually get that done? Should it be done before? What advice would you give to someone watching this video?
yeah, it happens in all stages, Gary. There are people in different stages. If you think of companies there have been companies that were ready to shut their doors because lack of productivity, lack of results, they're frustrated. The Working Genius has actually helped them thrive. So they're at their bottom worst moment. But then there's also organizations who understand the evolution of time and change that say, how do we stay ahead of the curve? So Working Genius is for everybody.
Hmm. Hmm. And can Working Genius be used with other? I mean, there's was it the Briggs? What's it called? The Myers-Briggs or
Yeah, DISC, Myers-Briggs,
My?
DISC assessment. There's
Yeah.
when I do the working, yes, when I
Can
do the
it be
Working Genius
used in?
assessment, yeah, because you can, DISC says, okay, if I said I'm a high I, that means that I like short and sweet. I don't want to hear the novel. Just tell me, send me an email with bullet points,
Right.
right? So that's my personality profile with DISC. If I'm and I, by the way, I've seen some similarities with profiles, but DISC and Myers-Briggs can change in your life. Like you can take a DISC assessment right now, and then you
Mhm.
can take a DISC assessment in 10 years. And if you've been through some major life events, that profile will change, right? Death in the family,
Yeah.
divorce, or marriage, or children, that because your priorities change. Working Genius, the way the questions are framed up, it's really about who you are at your core, right? Like, what are your core values?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Have you got an assessment there with you? Can you answer give us some questions so we have some idea?
I don't. It's a
Ah,
link, and but I could certainly do a follow up with somebody if they were interested in.
exactly. Just to
But yeah,
understand what kind of question
do you
does.
like helping people?
Okay.
Do you like puzzles? Do you, right? Because puzzles are creative, right? Like problem solving. And
Okay.
so there's a series of 41 questions, and it starts to identify those traits of who you are at your core, and then understanding how your thought process is, and the things that you value.
Hmm.
Um, and then and it will ask, like many of the other assessments, it asks the same question differently because it wants to dig deeper. So you'll answer your questions and you go, hey, did I already answer this question? And it's worded a little differently
Yeah.
to drill down even deeper. But it takes about 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes to do the assessment. Yeah, it's fun. And you
And so
can,
when the assessment's done, like in my case, it was done and it came out invention and enablement. But and
Mhm.
I look at the other ones and I look at wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity.
Yeah,
I would say, I mean, I don't know if I really completely agree with invention and enablement. Enablement, yes. Um, mm, or can there be more? Can there be more than what just two? That's another question because I would put even
excuse
tenacity.
me.
I do try to get to the end of projects. So
Yeah. Yeah. And tenacity is actually your fourth genius. So if you were to, your assessment is IEGTWD. Okay. It
hmm,
does not mean that you can't do any of those things. What it means is
hmm,
that from a core values, the things that give you energy,
hmm,
you have the most energy with helping people solve their problems. And then galvanizing, right? Rallying people around an idea, inspiring them, creating buy-in is and finishing things. That's so if you think about it as a tank of gas, if your
hmm.
gas tank is full, you're functioning in the IE area. And then as your gas starts to low, as your energy level starts to drop, then you start to go down. So don't think of it as strengths and weaknesses. Think of it as these are how I value things. And at my core, I love solving problems. I love helping people. I love rallying people around ideas and getting them motivated. I love finishing projects and then wondering about possibilities or the status quo, like the head in the clouds. Could this be different? Doesn't mean you can't do that. It just means you don't go there first. And then discernment would be your last one. It doesn't mean you can't make good decisions. You just don't go there first with your energy.
Right. That's where you go. That's your.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I was looking at my strengths, WD, are the two frustrations for you. So we would actually make a good team, Gary, because we complement each other.
okay. Okay. Yeah. And so you were also saying that in different phases of your life, these can be moved around, or different situations, whether it's stress or whether it's I don't know, a marriage or birth or whatever. These things can move around, can become more. Um,
Well, so the working genius assessment, I said this in the beginning that I believe it doesn't change.
oh,
And Patrick Lencioni has that same view. He also believes that it won't change. Now, it's only been around for 4 or 5 years, so we don't know, what that does. Um, Now, we approach things differently depending on the situation and the environment, but the things that give us energy, that's where we go first.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's who we are. That's who we are at our core. You know, I was looking at, one of the phrases for BEwell is, God helps us. God helps those who help themselves. You have that in quotes.
Yeah.
And working genius is your God-given talents, your God-given, the things that it's how you were created.
Mm,
It's where how you show up in the world, the things that give you energy. And
mm,
when we can start to trust others and look at our team, because it is a teamwork assessment. In fact, I gave the assessment to my wife and my two children, and we looked at it, and my wife and I had some aha moments about the
mm.
way we communicate, right? And so when I can start to understand her values better, and then when I don't have those values, it can cause frustration in her. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I can't do those things. It means I have to be intentional with those things with her because she's my wife, she's my
Yeah.
partner. We're a
Yeah.
team.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I completely agree with you. I mean, I started my business 25 years ago, and there are things that I love doing, and there are things that I just cannot do. If you put me in front of numbers and say, okay, we're going to be sending invoices, we want to be looking at all the statistics, we're going to be, I will just die. I just wouldn't be. I just wouldn't function. Yeah, put me out and say, go and talk to the clients, go around, go and and present the company, whatever. That's not a problem. I can go and do that.
And
Other people are afraid of that. They want to stay in the office. They say, no, 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 no. I'm not going out. I want to be here. I want to do this. And so,
and by the way, Gary, when you have to do invoicing, it takes energy away from the areas that you thrive, and then
yeah,
it causes you to be less productive. And so as we start to build organizations, we outsource that or we hire somebody to do those things. And there's this cost of, hey, I'm gonna have to make a financial commitment to hire somebody to do that. But if
yeah,
I thrive in these other areas, I'm gonna be more productive. So there's very much potential that we're going to bring in more revenue because I'm working in areas of my gifts and talents.
all right. So as we're coming to the end, Jason,
Yeah.
wrap it up. Just summarize a little bit of the advantages, maybe even some disadvantages, or something to be aware of when we undertake these assessments, because that could be another area as well. We take it. It's not black
Yeah.
and white. There's some
Yeah.
flexibility.
In psychology, there's something called the fundamental attribution error. And what that basically says is that um, we shouldn't be guilty. We shouldn't feel guilt because we're not like somebody else, or
Hmm.
we shouldn't judge or make assumptions because of somebody else. I'll give you an example. If you're in traffic and you get cut off, somebody cuts you off and pulls in
Yeah,
front of you, you start to have these emotions and judgment about who that person is as a human being.
yeah.
You don't know what's going on inside the car. They might be a jerk, or they might be in the middle of a medical emergency and they're trying to get to the hospital, right?
Hmm.
We don't know. And so we make assumptions and judgment on others.
Hmm.
And the opposite of that is if I see a leader who does something really well, and I don't do that thing very well, I shouldn't feel guilty or judge myself and say I'm no good. You know
Hmm.
what? I should say God didn't create me that way. God gave me these gifts, and God gave him or her those gifts. And once you start to accept that and believe it and buy into it, then we can start cultivating and growing. And so it's trust, communication, and collaboration.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think that's another one. That's another one of the problems or things that when people are looking at, say, I want to be like that, or we're all unique. Each one has its own,
Yeah.
and you can't be like me, and I can't be like you, because there are innate traits inside of us. That's the way we were built. That's the way we were created. So I think even the acceptance of we bring different gifts, perspectives to the table, whatever we bring. um, but in my experience, I've tried to sort of involve teams and people, and not everyone wants to be involved. Sometimes they're happy to be on the outskirts of decision making. They don't want, and I've always been a leader that's tried to actually get people involved and say, let's do this together. But there have been moments where I like to take control and say, no, it's going to be, this is it. It's going to be like this. It's gone against my values, against my grain, because that's not the way I am. Yet there were moments where there was no room to to get other people's opinions. You have to go just one way. So I think that's another thing as well. A leader must know when to take control, when to delegate, and so on.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the coaching piece, right, Gary? It's asking questions,
Yeah,
self-discovery, finding out what's important to people and then helping them along that path. And that's heart-centered leadership. And I love that empathy and compassion and understanding and emotional intelligence, all is important and in conjunction with the working genius model. And so that's, it's a journey. It's not going to happen overnight.
No, but even this BEwell, the BEwell journey, Jason, is all about that. It's about bringing, it's been going on for a year and a half now, every week, bringing in people like yourself and asking them these kind of questions and throwing some light on. Today we spoke about the assessment tools, the personality and productivity assessment tool, Working Genius. But there have been talks on all sorts of different growth areas, let's call them, whether it's mindfulness, emotional intelligence, conflict management, data analytics. So I go into some of the areas that are very technical, but then some other areas very holistic and very humanistic, let's say. And that's what people is all about. That's what I try to do, and this is my contribution out to whoever watches this video and whoever gets some value out of it. So thank you, Jason, for coming along, for your time.
Thank you so much, Gary. It was an honor and very pleasant to be here, and I enjoy what you're doing with the BEwell project. So thank you for showing up the way you do.
No worries, and good luck with your endeavors, whether it's the Working Genius or with your 2 children on the farm or the snowstorm that you're in now. Good luck with whatever you do.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Thank you.